On this episode of the Fighting Irish Faithful Show, we will introduce a new tradition. Is Ian Book the best quarterback Brian Kelly has ever had? And can Ian Book lead Notre Dame to the title? So kick back, relax, pour yourself a drink, and let's go, Irish.
Three wide receivers right. They're going to go for two. Back to throw. Walks, looks, has the time, lost the ball. The pass is batted down. It's batted down by Peru.
Dawson throws, open receiver in the end zone. Touchdown, Notre Dame. Somehow, the Irish did it.
Out of the pack, 30, 35. Goodbye, baby. At the 50, the 40, the 30, the 20, the 10. 5-5 rocket touchdown, Irish.
Zibikowski looking for a block. Cuts to the right to the 40. Gets a block. Gets to the 45, 50. Up to the 45, 40, 30. 1 minute to beat. 20, 15, 10. He's down to the 5. Touchdown, Irish.
What's going on, Fighting Irish Faithful, and welcome back. As you can tell, the audio's slightly better this time around. Played around with the audio and realized I had clicked the wrong input button. So this expensive mic I have didn't even record last time. So hey, what can I say? We poured ourselves a drink and stuff just happens. Anyway, you can follow me at faithful_Irish on the Twitter. You can email me if you're into the email thing at fightingirishfaithful@gmail.com. Also the YouTube channel. Appreciate everybody who I coerced or bothered via text message. Thank you. Appreciate it. Go ahead and leave comments, throw stones or mean comments. Your show sucks. Hey, you know what? Bring it. And I'm always looking to improve. You can find us on Anchor and Spotify, iTunes. And that was my first goal, was let's just get this on iTunes. You know, I've done the YouTube thing before, but if I'm on iTunes, I've arrived. It's official. So check, box done. I think the next goal is we need to get an episode that has 100 listeners, and then we'll go from there. So thank you to everyone who is going to stick with it into episode 2. So funny story. This week I had a, quote, meeting with an organization. I won't go into details, but we were going through some old boxes after the meeting, and it was some stuff left over from the old building, and there were 3 large boxes just full of booze. We were talking rum, vodka, scotch, whatever. So I was like, great. And our leader said, hey, you know what, get rid of this stuff. And it was not the high quality stuff, but hey, who's going to argue with 2 free bottles of booze? So tonight we are drinking one of those for the first time. It is Inverhouse Green Plaid. We are not sponsored by them, but if they want me to, I will sell out. It is aged for a whopping 36 months, and it is, quote, on the label, a rare Scotch whiskey. So there you go. So now that our drink is poured, let's move to a new tradition. It was suggested by my brother that we should do some sort of salute or toast during the episode. So this week, for the first ever salute and toast, goes out to Dalen Hayes of the Notre Dame defense. It's not for a big sack last week, although maybe he did at practice, but I wouldn't know. It was his interview that he had done with Brian Kelly on the Today Show this week, and he had done a very good job answering some questions and talking about the positive nature of the players interacting on campus, avoiding coronavirus in a controlled environment with professional doctors and great support and all of that. Not to get controversial about the whole thing, but, you know, whether, you know, the players were safer on campus in the football program versus what's happening in the Big Ten and the Pac-12, I think he handled himself well. So him and Kelly, but mainly Dalen Hayes, cheers to you, buddy. Salute. Someone go ahead and give him a high five for me on campus, but then immediately wash your hands. One other benefit of the players, and this is just me talking now, if the players are on campus and are not home or away from campus in this bubble under a very controlled environment, under strict guidance and watchful eye of the university, they're less likely to get out of trouble. How many times have we had players that get, in trouble at the backer with a police, Tommy Reese, or, a car with weed and guns? If we have locked down, essentially quarantined the team in a bubble on campus to the best of our abilities, there's less likelihood of some of that shenanigans going on in the off season right before the beginning of the season. So let's shift to quarterback, the meat and potatoes of this show. But if you're vegetarian or vegan, we're talking probably the polenta and what are those big mushrooms called? Portobello mushrooms. There you go, to our vegan brethren. Ian Book is definitely the most experienced quarterback Brian Kelly has had. We went through the whole Chris, then Reese and Golson, and then Golson and Zaire after that meltdown, and then we had a Zaire Kaiser controversy, and then eventually we were saved by Wimbush, where there was stability, but then he was replaced by Book. Book essentially has had 2 seasons already under his belt. This is the first time ever Notre Dame will enter a season with a quarterback entering his 3rd active year of starting consistently. So that is a huge, huge positive for the program, something that has never happened under Brian Kelly. In a press conference this week, Brian Kelly mentioned that we are going to see, quote, the best version of Ian Book this fall. So I took those words quite literally, and I looked at Ian Book's last 2 seasons of 2018 and 2019, looked at stats such as yards, completion percentage, touchdowns, etc., and pieced together the best of both seasons for each of those categories and came up with, quote unquote, currently Ian Book's best numbers. That puts him at a 68% throwing percentage. That was in 2018. He threw the most yards, over 3,000 last year. Yards per completion was at 12.6. 34 touchdowns last year. That is amazing. That's really, really good. That's almost like Heisman level quality. He had over 2 touchdowns average per game, only 6 interceptions, and his touchdown to interception ratio was 5.7. So most of the stats are heavy regarding 2019, but there's a few in there like completion percentage and passer rating that are better in 2018. So if we took the best of Ian Book over the last 2 years, we can expect that or better. I'm hoping anywhere from 10 to 20% better, and that would be amazing. So how does Ian Book stack up against the other quarterbacks Brian Kelly has had at Notre Dame? Really, it's no question. The only category that Reese, Golson, Kaiser had ever had, only counting those 3 guys, would be yards per completion. Deshaun Kaiser is the leader in that category of 13.7 yards per completion versus Ian Book's best 12.6. And that's it. Every other category, Ian Book is by far and away better. More touchdowns per season, more better passer rating, more yards per game, better in completion percentage by a long shot. The next closest would be Deshaun Kaiser. So that is good. We are definitely looking at Brian Kelly's best quarterback at Notre Dame. However, because we're Notre Dame and we like to be nostalgic, how does he compare to other, quote, recent quarterbacks that Notre Dame has had, specifically Jimmy Clausen and Brady Quinn? In some of these categories, Ian Book is lacking. I'm not going to lie. Clausen threw for 3,700 yards. Brady Quinn in 2005 threw for 3,900 yards. Almost 4,000 yards. Grant, those are Charlie Weiss teams, very heavy, dependent on the pass. But if we're looking at this in a vacuum, how is Ian Book stacking up against those guys? He needs to throw for almost another 1,000 yards to overcome Brady Quinn. Yards per completion, Jimmy Clausen and Brady Quinn have him beat. And Brady Quinn threw the most touchdowns in a season in 2006. He threw for 37 touchdowns. So at the end of the day, Ian Book can improve in some areas to be better than Jimmy Clausen and Brady Quinn. However, to take this even further, Brady Quinn's not there anymore. Jimmy Clausen's not there. Hell, they're not even playing in the NFL anymore. And that's no criticism to them. But what's happening right now in college football? How is Ian Book stack up against current quarterbacks? But not so much who's he going to face this season, like Trevor Lawrence from Clemson or whatnot, but how does he compare to the title champion? Book has said that this season it is title or bust. So how do you get there? What sort of stats do you have to put out there, or what do you have to throw in order to win a title? So what have the guys who have won a title done since 2010, when Brian Kelly started coaching? It's about 10 years. And what have they produced, and what are the numbers that are out there by these national championship level quarterbacks? And is there a gap that Ian Book needs to close on? So I looked at Trevor Lawrence, Jalen Hurts, Deshaun Watson, JT Barrett, AJ McCarron, so on and so forth. These guys have won titles since Kelly has been at Notre Dame, and what is the average? How are they doing? So how does Ian Book stack up versus national championship quarterbacks? First, let's talk positives. What's he doing well? Where has he already performed at a level that meets or exceeds the average national championship performance for the last 10 years? The first, completion percentage. In 2018, Ian Book threw 68%. National champion average, 66%. Check. Touchdowns. The average champion throws 31.9 touchdowns a year. Ian Book threw 34 last year, so check. Touchdowns per game. Ian Book, 2.6. National champion average, 2.2. Another good win. Interceptions thrown. He only has thrown 6. That's his best value. The national champion average is over 7. Interceptions per game. Ian Book, 0.46. Average champion, half an interception a game. So those are very important things. Now let's move into the areas of improvement. This is not meant to criticize Ian Book, but this is to say, hey, we'll support you. This is what you have to work on to get better. First is yards. Total yards, he's shy 370 yards for the season. Grant, you play another game, say in a playoff situation. But let's go to average yards per game. He's not that far off, only 6 yards average per game more. So that's a longer pass, or the receiver getting another play or breaking a tackle or something. His passer rating is down 12 points, so that's got to get worked on. His touchdown to interception ratio needs slight improvement. The national champion averages a 6.4 touchdown to interception ratio. Ian Book is 5.7. And the yards per completion, Ian Book's sitting at 12.6, which is very respectable, but he needs to get above 13.5 yards per completion. Where Ian Book excels, he does very well with the short passes, the medium range passes, bubble screen type stuff. That stuff is really, really good. He needs to work on his deep ball and longer passes. There's an efficiency that comes with a longer pass, longer bomb throw to a Will Fuller type of guy, Braden Lindsey this season. Let's get it done. There is one stat that has jumped out on the page that all of these quarterbacks, anyone from Joe Burrow all the way down to AJ McCarron or even Jake Coker, these guys are doing a very good job at a stat that I have, invented or come across while cracking the spreadsheets, called touchdown to attempt ratio. How many passes do you have to do before you throw a touchdown? Ian Book is sitting at about 6%. That's about 1 touchdown for every 16 passes, roughly. The national champion average is at 8%. That is about 1 for every 12 passes. You look at someone like Joe Burrow, he is far and above the best of anyone who has won a title in the last 10 years at 11.4%. Over better than 1 out of 10 passes is a touchdown. Cam Newton was about the same. JT Barrett was about the same. Same with Jameis Winston. And those guys, some of them have won Heisman, so it's no surprise that they're performing at that level. What about these other guys? How about Trevor Lawrence? We're going to face him this year. In 2018, as a freshman, Trevor Lawrence, his touchdown to attempt ratio was 7.6, below average of the national champion, but it is better than Ian Book. And we saw that when they beat us in the Cotton Bowl. A.J. McCarron, I find to be a very interesting comparison for Ian Book. A.J. McCarron in 2011, when he won his first title, his touchdown to attempt ratio was 4.9%. But in 2012, it jumped massively to 9.6. Almost 1 out of 10 of his passes were for a touchdown. Grant, it helps when your team has a good running back and a good defense, and you can be a lot more systematic and precise with your throws rather than just slinging it out there because we got to go win the game and mount a comeback at home against Virginia Tech. And yes, I was at that Notre Dame game last year. Got great tailgate stories, but that's for another time. This doesn't mean that Notre Dame can't win a title. It doesn't mean that Ian Book can't perform at the title level. But if Ian Book cannot perform at the national champion average, then we may have to do something different this season for success. I believe he can do it. I believe he's worked hard. I believe he's motivated and determined to bring a title back to South Bend. But in case that doesn't happen and he falls short because he is human or the season is canceled or whatever, it's up to Brian Kelly. This goes back to you. You're the czar. You're the head of the program. These other guys like A.J. McCarron, Greg McElroy, and Jake Hooker, they all had one thing in common. They all played for Nick Saban, but they all played for Alabama, which had great defense and a decent running back. They also ran for 60% of the time. So if Ian Book is not our savior, he's not our Joe Montana, he's not our Vince Young, you can go out and win the title, and we support you 100%, buddy. But it goes back to Kelly. If he falls short, then it's going to be up to the defense and hashtag RTDB. Run the damn ball. That's all I got for you this week. Hope you liked it. Hope the audio is much better. We'll try to get this up tonight. Again, you can follow me on Twitter at faithful_Irish, email and YouTube at Fighting Irish Faithful. And as always, Shlante, and let's go, Irish.